Welcome to the Kindness Project, the podcast designed to share stories of kindness and share how kindness can make positive change in our world, one small act at a time.
On this episode of the Kindness Project, we talk about comedy, games, and we have part 2 of our interview with Grant Maton from the Essex Wildlife Trust.
Welcome, my friends, to another episode of the Kindness Project. I am joined by a man who is a lover of the almond milk and a lady. A woman, and no trouble like trouble.
No.
Oh, you know what? I saw that. Oh, and a woman who is a lover of the coconut milk. It's Charlotte Davis. Now, I know, right? I'll tell you what I watched the other day, Russ. I rewatched Life on the Road, the David Brent movie that Ricky Gervais made a few years ago. And I know that some people aren't into like that sort of cringe comedy, but I love it. I absolutely love it. How do you feel about cringe comedy, Russ?
I've never seen that one, but I don't mind a bit of comedy. So
Comedy generally, what's your favourite?
I'll tell you what I really got into during lockdown. Lee Mack's not going out.
Lee Mack's not coming out. That in parts, I mean, number one, I like Lee Mack. I think Lee Mack, but weirdly, I think Lee Mack is better stand-up than sitcom. You know what is amazing about Lee Mack? It's not going out. It's got one of my favourite comedians in, a guy called Tim Vine.
Yeah.
And Tim, I think, is he still in it? Or
yeah, he's still in it. Yeah.
Yeah. So Tim Vine.
Not the more recent episodes. He was the brother of the landlord.
Right.
Now just the mum and dad are in it.
Fair enough. But Tim Vine is just in his stand-up, he just does literally pun after pun after pun after pun. And we saw him at the Edinburgh Comedy Festival a few years ago. And literally, one of his jokes was him smashing a poppadom on the front of the screen and just going, "That, my friends, is the hardest puzzle in the world."
The other comedy I like is Would I Lie to You?
Oh, so do I. I think that is good. Yeah, what do you like comedy-wise?
I like Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Oh, yes.
Mock the Week. What else do I like?
You ever thought of doing any stand-up, Russ?
No.
I mean, I think you just talking about your hot head for 20 minutes would go down as storm.
Listen, I've put the shovel away this week, so...
Sorry, say again?
Nothing from me.
He said he's put his shovel away.
No, honestly, I think you should consider a bit of stand-up. I think it'd be good. What do you like comedy-wise, Sophie? Sophie's joining us. Sorry, I'm joined by a girl who isn't drinking coconut milk, but is drinking...
Fruity water.
She's having a fruity water, ladies and gents. Sophie, what fruits is in the water?
All of them.
All of them?
All LGBTQIA.
Sorry, is that an LBG? Sorry, I'm getting this wrong. LGBTQIA fruity water.
I said it was fruity. That's why she said.
Oh, okay.
She's thinking it.
Has it got more LBG? I always get that wrong. There's too many letters to it. That's why. I mean, when it was LGBT, no, I still can't get that right. when it was just LGBTQ, I was fine. But now it's the A and the I and the plus, and I'm getting confused, Rose. Do you?
Yeah.
Rose, I don't think Rose knows.
I don't think Russ wants to comment.
I think we need a gender conversation with ourselves, to be honest. Right. Let's move on very quickly. And let's talk about the question of the podcast. And today's question of the podcast is one that's very close to my heart. It's one of my favourite subjects, kids' games. And what is the best game you played as a kid? For me, Russ, it was British Bulldog. Yeah. What was it for you, Charlotte?
We're talking like games you played in the field.
So you can games. It could be games you play in the field. It could be games you play in the street, or it could be games you played on your computer, or it could be games you played on a board, on a table. But as a kid,
I used to quite enjoy pretend sword fighting.
Pretend sword fight. Who did you used to play with?
People.
People. Charlotte likes pretend.
Likes a sword.
So
Well, this is interesting. Should we talk about you and Sophie's relationship when it comes to swords? Who wants to explain it? Is it Sophie or is it Russ? Go on and explain the sword thing.
Explain it.
When Russell comes to our house, I have a fun sword that I got from Lego Land, and I hit him on the head with it.
Literally, as soon as Russell comes into the Dame's household and he sits on the sofa and all he wants to do is chill because he works hard, does Russ. All he wants to do is relax. Suddenly, this sword appears from nowhere. We may not have seen the sword for months, but suddenly it turns up. And Russ, he's getting poked.
Let's not forget,
for
when she
days.
couldn't find the sword last time, she attacked me with a roll of Christmas paper.
Yeah, I mean, you will use other stuff apart from swords, won't you? I think the important thing, as opposed that's you two for next time, Russ. If we can't find the sword or the Christmas paper, apparently bamboo's going to be used.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah,
This is like a torture camp.
She's going to cut me a switch.
Sorry, what are you two talking about? Shoes. You're going to poke Russ. You're going to poke Russ with a shoe.
No, we watched a film together.
It was like anime.
And then the dad saw the little girl wasn't wearing shoes, and he just went, "No shoes!"
And he slapped her across the mouth.
What a bad influence Eddie is on kids these days.
I don't know what is going on.
Oh, that was a good film, though.
I don't know what is going on. But can I just say,
She got left behind at a
My-
train station.
my
Oh, I've been there.
playground game consisted of basically running and sitting on my computer, very similar to me doing now. Okay, your playground game was what, Russ?
I didn't really have a playground game.
Okay, but what was you like? What was your favourite game as a kid?
I did like a bit of sensible world of soccer.
Exactly. So again, similar to what you like to do now.
And the original Final Fantasy was
Oh,
Well, Final
quite
I
good.
found the original Final Fantasy a bit finicky because it just took you back to the beginning every
Fantasy.
single time.
Final Fantasy VII was good. That's the one I got into.
Very sad.
But Russell's not changed so much. Where he likes to play football on his computer. What was your game?
I liked playing with swords, and now I play Dungeons and Dragons.
Exactly. So Charlotte likes playing with swords, and now she likes playing D&D. One of Sophie's many playground games is just poking you with a stick. What does that say about what she's going to do when she gets older? I mean, I don't know. It's not a good sign, is it? Let's be honest. But we are really looking forward to hearing from you, listener, about what your favourite game as a kid is,
Yeah.
and keep it as wide and as colourful as you want.
Yeah.
I don't know whether anybody's going to say poke my uncle with a sword, but it could be there.
Dad,
Sorry, so do you want to say something?
when you said listener, are you saying that there's only one person that listens to?
No, I'm not. We have got quite a few listeners, haven't we, Russ? So it's definitely more than
We're
one.
touching 120,000 downloads now.
Amazing, great stuff. Yeah, it's doing really, really well. And on that note, let's give our listeners what they want and do
You're
the
saying
first.
they don't want to listen to this?
I think that's probably part of the reason they tune in. But let's give our listeners what they want and give them the first bit of.
Kindness news.
And this is girls soccer team goes from biggest loser to top division after dad starts coaching. A girls' soccer team has gone from losing 20-0 each week to winning promotion to the top division after a dad started coaching them. Leek Town Devils under 15s were getting routinely thrashed every time they turned out until Stuart Henley stepped in 2 years ago. The 41-year-old car valeter took the job when the previous manager quit because no one else would, and he's transformed the team's fortunes. With the help of a 50-year-old assistant, Ivan Austin, also a parent, they renamed the team the Devils and started training hard in February 2020. The team, who used to be called Golden Hill, now win regularly and secure promotion for next year after finishing second in the division. Stuart from Stoke-on-Trent in England credits off-field bonding sessions like quizzes and focuses in training the basics. Now, I wonder, in terms of any sort of team game, how important is that? Not only the getting the training done on the pitch, but just feeling more like a team. Do you reckon that's important?
Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of books lately,
Okay.
and yeah, it seems quite important, that bonding element.
And what books have you been listening to?
Well, I'm just finishing Mindset now, and it was quite important in that you had that team element.
Yeah.
That bonding element.
Yeah, 100%. Well, look, everything gets done, like every success in life is achieved with other people, isn't it? That's the reality of it. And part of the reason that we talk about kindness on the podcast is because the better the relationship you've got with other people, the better that you'll just simply get stuff done. So yeah. I think that's really important. And it sounds like Stuart's really got this team moving. After a few weeks, we got down to training and they really started to take it in. And my ethos has been on doing the basic stuff well and letting the girls decide what they feel they need to work on rather than dictate sessions myself. Stuart's first session was blighted by the pandemic, which forced him and Ivan to get creative with training. They organised team building activities with the girls to help them bond on and off the field. The 2021 season was really stop and start because of the pandemic. But it did give us the opportunity to train really well as a team. Our first came together when we were at home. We scored a goal and it was like winning the World Cup. Watching their faces light up was great to see. Although we lost the game, we didn't care because the goal was a sign of process. There's a really good, there's a video I saw on Twitter the other day of a guy called Stuart Dick. And he was an Olympic coach. Why are you laughing at that? He was an Olympic coach. And he was talking about the fact that a win is just getting a little bit better every day. Like it's not being the next Usain Bolt. It's just like challenging yourself to be better. So that's really, really important. Next game, they won the game and then went on an unbeaten run of 8 games with a win, but not losing. And next, they just drew 1 fixture. The team star player, 15-year-old Chelsea, was also impressed individually, becoming the top scorer in the particular league. So loads of good stuff happening there. You know, getting kids out and active, building teams, and turning the team that wasn't going particularly well into success. Next, this is from the BBC. Kind Nottingham stranger leaves £20 to pay for parking fine.
A woman said she was overwhelmed after a stranger left money on her car to help pay for a car fine. Selena Mills got a ticket from the machine in the car park in Mapperley Top, Nottingham, on Tuesday, which allowed her to stay free for 2 hours. On her return, she found she had been fined £25 due to her ticket blowing over, but she also found £20 in a note saying, "From one mum to another." After posting her thanks on Facebook, she tracked down the mystery donor. The mother of 2 of Bakersfield, Nottingham, said she thought the ticket might have blown over when she shut the door. She said she had sobbed when she read the stranger's note. "I think she has restored my faith in humanity." The 37-year-old, who is a deputy manager of 2 children's care homes, said, "I felt really overwhelmed, happy, and my heart felt full. I just want to thank her for choosing me for an act of kindness. It had a big impact on my day." She said she would challenge the fine, but regardless of whether she has to pay, She said she would keep sharing the love and make someone else's day as happy as
I
hers was.
absolutely love that. Just helping somebody out and showing that actually we're in a position where collectively we can all help each other. Really, really nice. And on that note, we're gonna move on to part 2 of the interview with Grant Maton from the Essex Wildlife Trust. He's talking about how we can make sure that we are helping not only ourselves and looking at kindness, and I think Dexter knows, but talking about helping animals in our environment as well. So let's listen to the second part of the interview.
I suppose the element is, as you alluded to earlier, that element where there are more houses being built. And there's always that pressure on housing stock, but is it worth it in sacrifice of that? And you've got to argue no, haven't you?
Yeah.
Sort of.
But it was also thinking about, I don't know, let's use an example. If 600 houses were built on an area where it was intensively agricultural for 100 or so years, all the hedges have been cut down and all the trees have been cut down, etc. So these 600 houses are put on this development. It wasn't maybe good quality agricultural land in the end because it had been over agriculturalised. Say we influence every one of those 600 houses to have a pond. To put up bird boxes, bat boxes. To reinstate some of the hedgerows, plant trees on those sites and everything. Put in hedgehog runs, so the gravel boards have a little sort of area where the hedgehog can go through the gravel board. So we create wildlife corridors and everything. We put in buddleia for the butterflies and everything. Then suddenly that intensively agriculturalised area, yes, it's 600 houses, but it becomes a haven for wildlife.
Well, I mean, it's really interesting because one of the things that happened during lockdown is one of my neighbours, funny enough, and we're looking sort of like sort of 2021 where everything had eased off, knocked on our door, and I said, how you doing? You doing all right? And how's lockdown been? He went, I learnt a new skill in lockdown. I was like, okay, interesting, tell me more. He went, I'm now a beekeeper.
Excellent.
So what he did, he bought 2 hives and started making his own honey. And I said, this is amazing. Can we come over and take a look? Now, I think the fascination with animals, as you alluded to, starts when you're a kid. So I said to my 9-year-old then, let's go over and sort of, went over to my neighbours across the road, and it's great because we're backing onto a county park. Actually, the bees fly over. The bees fly over.
Well, they don't see the boundaries.
No. So they just fly over and sort of pollinate and then fly back. And it was really funny because we went to see the hives, and he was had his beekeeping outfit on. He had a full beekeeping outfit for my daughter because he said, I want to make sure she's safe. But I've only got a helmet for you, Chris. So watch your arms. And I was like, well, this could be a bit dodgy, but loved it. You showed us that that this is what you look out for and stuff, and it's and then we'll come on to this, but the education on animals and the fact that you just don't know this stuff is fascinating.
And you don't know what comes into your garden either. I mean, I was talking to one of our trustees about 11 years ago, and he's known as the Badger Man. Right. And he's got a badger set near his garden, and he's put an outside hide to view these badgers and everything. And I said, let's pop over. And he said, He said, by all means. He said, but actually, have you ever thought of throwing some peanuts out in your own back garden? And I thought, why would I do that? So he said, well, you never know, So my wife and I had to persuade my wife with a bottle of wine because she wasn't so interested. But we sat out in the back garden, lit some candles, scattered peanuts all over the lawn. Felt a little bit silly. Why are we doing this in an urban garden? But I knew that the fences weren't all secure, so there's places for things to come in and out. As I say, it's about 11 years ago now. And about 2 o'clock in the morning, when we were falling asleep after the second bottle of wine, and suddenly this stripy face appeared from the back of the pond.
Amazing.
And a badger wandered into the garden, started snuffling up the peanuts. Then there was a second one, a third one, and a fourth one.
Love it.
So we had 4 badgers in our urban garden.
Yeah,
And they'd obviously come from a set nearby. We live near some ancient woodland, but we're still an urban or suburban housing estate. And we've been feeding them ever since. And I've had up to 9 badgers in our back garden, our small urban back garden.
And because the animals learn that that's a friendly space.
Yeah, it's a friendly space.
Yeah.
It's they've still got all their heightened senses and everything. So there are certain times if you make a slight noise, they're off because they're very good at hearing. They can't see very well.
Right.
So I've been able to video them and shine a torch in them as I'm videoing them. So I've got some really close-up footage of them because they can't see particularly well.
Yeah.
But if I've got the wrong deodorant on and it gets too windy, they're off. So they can smell me.
No more Lynx Africa. Is the tip down there. I mean, clearly we need to be careful of that. And I suppose what I want to sort of focus on is the practical stuff that the Wildlife Trust does. So how does it? What's the work? We talked about local practical action earlier. What's the day-to-day work the Trust does?
Well, the day-to-day work of the Trust is that we've got over 200 staff. And what we kind of they're in sort of 3 or 4 key areas. One is education. So each of our nature discovery centres has an education officer. So we want to inspire the next generation. If we inspire a 6-year-old to be as passionate as I am about wildlife since I was the age of 6, they could be the next planning officer for a local authority. They could be working for a construction company, and because they've got a passion for wildlife, they want to think outside the box. Yeah. So we want to inspire the next generation. We've also got 87 nature reserves. They need some looking after, some practical management, so that we can maximise the management for wildlife.
87, of course.
87 nature reserves, over 9,000 acres that we look after.
Okay.
So obviously that takes practical input.
Is that land owned by the Trust, or is it
some of it is owned by the Trust.
Some of it you're custodians of on behalf of other people?
Some of it we bought over the years. Some of it we lease from certain organisations, farmers, local authorities. Some of them are co-projects with local authorities. They have all different sorts of ownership, and some of them are just because they back onto other nature reserves, and other reserves owned and run by the likes of the National Trust, the Woodland Trust, and everything, because wildlife doesn't see the borders, etc. When I mentioned the landscape conservation people, our rangers and our wardens, etc., I mean, we have over 2,000 volunteers, which again is another big source of help for the Trust. Yeah. Because if we're trying to clear away invasive species or something like that, and there's only one warden, then it takes a long time. If he's got a 20 or so volunteers, it might be a team of retirees, it might be a team from company. We get company volunteers, etc. That helps us. So the day-to-day work is just to make sure that we maximise our sites for wildlife conservation, but also we have an urban engagement officer who goes into the towns and talks about how they can help rewild their sites, whether it be housing estates, whether it be local authority sites, industrial estates, etc. We have a living landscapes officer who talks to farmers and big landowners about how they can enhance their sites for wildlife.
I suppose there's the element of, again, you'd know more than me on this, but is there the element of, particularly on working farms, sometimes they can see wildlife as a threat to their livelihoods? Or
they can, and it's working with farmers. I mean, the thing about Essex is that it's taken us since 1959 to get 9,000 acres under positive conservation. But there are some places, using one example, like Foulness Island, for instance, where that island with all the mudflats is 30,000 acres.
Right.
And so our 9,000 acres compared to some bigger farms, some local authority ownerships, some large corporates that own big areas is small compared. So we need to work with those landowners
in partnerships
and in education and in mitigation sometimes of some of the things they're doing, because if you're a Brent goose, you don't know whose land you're landing on. They'll land anywhere. It could be a pea field that the farmer really doesn't want a Brent goose to be on, or it could be our North Fambridge site where we specifically say Brent geese are welcome. They don't always read the signs.
No. I mean, we need to train the geese. That's what we need to do. The geese need reading lessons.
Exactly.
What's the common misconceptions you find about both the trust and the work you do? What do people assume you do?
I think sometimes as a purist, as somebody who's passionate about nature, they think that that's all we do. Look after nature, and sometimes as a purist, if you wanted to make sure your nature reserves had maximum sort of benefit to nature, sometimes humans are the thing that gets in the way.
Gotcha.
As I mentioned earlier, with the paths suddenly becoming 2 meters, 2 meters wide and everything. So we have to be careful. We have to make sure that we educate people that they can come and see nature, but they've got to be careful about what they do. So they don't leave litter behind. They don't sort of.
It's about balance.
It's about that balance, because if we don't get people to see nature, why would they want to conserve it? I use the example of moths. There are only about 30 or so day-flying moths. But there are 2,000 species of moths, or more than 2,000 species.
Amazing.
But of course, they're all nocturnal.
Gotcha.
And the problem is that only people like me who are passionate about wildlife, who sit in the middle of a woods at 2 o'clock in the morning with some really high-powered torches,
or put nuts out in your garden waiting for a badger.
Exactly. So there's only people like me that sometimes get to see these species. So how do we get people to appreciate that how they can save or not make sure the 2,000 plus species of moths go extinct? Well, what we do is we want them to preserve, say, Hockley Woods, which is a 600-acre ancient woodland. So if we preserve Hockley Woods, there might be 400 species of moths in Hockley Woods. Joe Public doesn't need to necessarily know all the 400 species of moths. They just want to make sure that Hockley Woods is good for them.
So talk to me a bit about biodiversity then, because I'd imagine keeping these spaces for wildlife to be in is good for us, right? Why?
Well, the thing is, I mean, we live a very frantic life. Especially with social media, where everything is instant and everything. Well, you can get that gratification just by walking in your local nature reserve. Walking on a sunny day, and you will see dragonflies and butterflies, and it's free. Don't forget, it doesn't cost you anything most of the time. And you can breathe clean air and everything, and it's what we seem to forget, that much as we surround ourselves with technology and everything, we are still a living, eating animal. So we've got to realise that much as we surround ourselves with things, we are still at the same level as them. We're still part of nature.
Great.
And if you take away the foundations of some, if you imagine if we had no bees, well, we actually potentially as a species could starve. I mean, I know that sounds a bit dramatic, but it is true. There are certain species in this world that if we were to lose them, then we would have some severe problems ourselves as a species. Take for instance the amount of fish that we automatically just assume we can eat.
But those fish have got to come from a biodiverse environment
they've got to come from an area where they're able to breed. Because otherwise, if we
overfishing certain fish breeds is an issue, isn't it? It's just
absolutely, and as going back to the Brazilian rainforest, once they are chopped down, some of these trees take hundreds of years to grow back.
Well, I think the rainforest is a really good example of over an intense focus on the needs of humans over and above the longer term nature of the impact on the environment, because the amount of farmland for producing meat that's now replaced rainforests is huge, isn't it? I think people
it's enormous, but people like me who say work for Essex Wildlife Trust, I know that I can't necessarily influence what's happening in the Brazilian rainforest. What I'm hoping is that because there's people like me passionate in Essex, hopefully there'll be people like me who are just as passionate in Brazil, just as passionate in the Philippines, or Australia, or wherever.
I mean, you can only focus on what you can control, right?
Yes, exactly. And the thing to do is, if you can concentrate on your backyard. And if 9 billion of us concentrate on our backyard, then we will succeed.
You can have a positive impact.
You can have a positive impact, absolutely.
So let's talk practically in terms of how people get involved. So when you go and speak to companies or individuals about supporting the work you do, how do they get involved?
Well, I mentioned earlier volunteering. Because that's very important for us. So if people want to, if you go through all the 46 wildlife trusts across the UK and Scotland and Northern Ireland, they'll all have websites. So if you Google search your local county wildlife trust.
What does volunteering look like? You sign up, and when there's a project, you decide to get involved in it.
It depends on how much time you're willing to give, to be honest. So we get volunteers that say they're retirees who might attend a work party once a week. And do it every week religiously.
There is this work or a party, because there is a challenge in it.
Yeah, we've got to be careful about using that at the moment.
I think we just need to make sure that either it's work or a party.
There's no alcohol involved and no cheese and wine.
So what does a work party involve?
A work party is literally just.
I'm not asking you to make a political statement here.
Just a group of people that are set a task each day, or each week, or each month, and it could be the same task, because sometimes if it's pulling up an invasive species, then sometimes unless you can eradicate it, that invasive species keeps growing, and you just keep maintaining it.
Is that like when you talk about invasive species, you talk about weeds that impact?
Well, we're talking about species that outcompete our own native species.
Gotcha.
So there are certain species like Himalayan balsam, for instance, that can dominate our rivers. Much as they've got a lovely, pretty flower and everything, they
don't
then
encourage biodiversity.
No, they crowd out all of our existing species and everything. So it is trying to get that balance. So volunteering is a great way of helping us. And it could be on one of projects. It could be our nature discovery centres. You'll get volunteers who just are quite happy to serve behind the shop. And ring up the produce that people are buying. So it could be something like that. The other way is by membership. I mentioned earlier that the Wildlife Trust have over 800,000 members. Well, obviously that's an income for each charity. The corporate membership of Essex Wildlife Trust has 400 businesses. Again, that's an income for the trust. There's a legacy element. So sadly, some of our older members or some of our long-term supporters die as the natural order of things, and they kindly leave us money. And some of that is unrestricted, so they don't mind if we spend it on our ongoing conservation work, and some of it might be towards a specific project that they've been involved with. We're happy with either. I mean, obviously, sometimes it helps us if it's unrestricted, purely because it means that we've got a wider. We can go across our whole reach. If it's too restricted, then we can't always spend it because we might not have the projects available. But we don't get me wrong, we're happy with either. So that gives us several income streams, etc. But again, by people becoming members, but involved with us, we show them and teach them about wildlife.
And I suppose the other thing there is, in terms of the volunteering element, I know you mentioned before that corporates and businesses can get involved in that as well, can't they?
Yeah. We've just had a work party from Morgan Sindel over in Langdon. I know some of your listeners won't necessarily know where there is, but near Basildon. We had Essex County Council volunteering with us over at Abberton, near Colchester.
And interestingly, as part of a lot of companies now, and I know because we've got a really good relationship with a sort of local medium-sized accountant, Kingston Smith, and they every year donate a day of their time, and they've got about 30 staff in their office, donate a day of their time to a good cause. And I actually think from a business owner perspective, that's an amazing idea, because then not only does it, you know, if you're a business that focuses on doing a bit of good in the world, that's great, but there's also a bit of team bonding there, you know, a bit of team cohesion, working on something that creates that bond. Just curious on this one, what's your favourite animal fact?
My favourite animal fact?
Yeah. What's the bit where you go, oh, that's interesting? I always like to share that.
It's difficult to know because I know so much about wildlife. It's actually pinning...
What's the bit where people just go, I didn't know that, you know, like sort of.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I mean, while you're thinking about it, I will share the one that I learnt about bees recently, because I'm chatting to my neighbour who's the new bee honey maker and beekeeper, and he told me that most bees you buy in most honey you buy in the shop are fed on sugar. They're not fed on pollen, and it's effectively factory bees creating supermarket honey. And he said, wait until you try the difference in terms of, and there is a real difference in the subtlety of the taste of actually pollen-fed honey. And I didn't realise there was a
difference in flavour depending on where the beehive is located as well.
Clearly, because it's different flowers.
If it's located near lavender, or if it's located near a heathland or something like that, you'll get different flavours.
Yeah, so that's my one. Most honey you taste doesn't taste like pollen-fed honey because it's factory built, factory led. Have you thought of the fact yet?
Only the fact that a lot of people might not know that male frogs quite often don't leave the pond. They don't hibernate away from the pond, and often they'll hibernate actually in the pond itself. And they'll effectively slow down their body to the point where they're virtually dead.
So the heartbeat slows down underwater,
and they'll literally sink into the detritus in the bottom of the pond. And even if the pond freezes, they will still survive.
That is an amazing fact. I love that. Absolutely love that. Talk to me a little bit about how people can get in touch and find out a bit more about the trust.
Well, from a local point of view, I mean, having an unusual name like Grant Maton, Maton, it's quite easy to find me on LinkedIn, places like that. So if anybody's in Essex that specifically wants to touch base with us, then come through me. And then depending on if it's on the business side, obviously I can talk to you about that side of things. If it's on the personal side, I'll put you in touch with our membership department. If it's on volunteering, I'll put you in touch with our volunteer officer, etc., etc. If it's nature discovery centres, I can put you in touch with the nearest one. If it's further afield, then obviously look up your local wildlife trust.
And just Google Wildlife Trust.
Yeah, just Google Wildlife Trust.
Are they based county by county?
Most of them are, some of them are blocks of counties.
Right.
And some of them are just individual counties.
Gotcha.
So, but you should be able to find them. But again, if you can't, come through me and I'll signpost you to your nearest Wildlife Trust.
Amazing. Grant, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Really enjoyed sharing a little bit about the trust.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed letting everybody know about us. Thank you.
Cool.
So that was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
And that, if you haven't listened to part one yet, I should have said this at the start, the second part, really. If you haven't listened to part one yet, you can do all of the previous podcast episodes, including all the interviews. You can find at www.thekindnessproject.co.uk. You can find them there.
or
And-
on any other podcast streaming.
or any other podcast streaming, Apple, Spotify, all of the good ones, and some of the rubbish ones too. Now, the question we asked last week. Oh, so we got,
Whoa!
whoa,
Hold your horses.
easy, soldier. Go on.
Tis the end of another podcast, but the end is never truly the end because the end is always the beginning of something entirely new.
And we've got some really romantic people out there because last week we asked what's the most romantic thing you've ever done for somebody. Steve Dan, who is the regular contributor to the show and the inventor of the chip loaf, if we remember that.
He didn't
Said-
invent it.
He didn't invent it, but he educated me on it, which is pretty good. Steve Dan said, on our first anniversary, my wife wanted to go out for an Italian, so I took her to mine. It's quite nice, isn't it? Sharon Adkins got a car full of red balloons. Tam Kane said, when I was 15, my boyfriend at the time made me a heart-shaped chocolate fudge cake. Craig Kavanagh said, while I was at college, I made a box made of chocolate and handmade truffles, also a rose made of sugar that my now sister-in-law picked up to show her friends. She dropped it and it shattered on the floor. And Hilary Rowland said her husband proposed on the Orient Express. All very romantic. Love that. And that's the end of another show. Have a really good week and we'll see you next time on the Kindness Project.
Bye.
Bye.